Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome once again to Textiler. This is our fourth class in this deep dive technical session. Just to kind of inform us somehow, we are behind schedule, and I think the class was scheduled to go for about 7 weeks before now. So I want to appeal yes, I want to appeal to us to just bear with me that we are going to be using our complete 8 weeks. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can. It's
Okay.
fine.
All right.
Or by me, I don't know about others.
Yes, ma'am. We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. So without taking much time, let's jump right in. So last week, we started Module 2 of the course, and where we talk about different products in Azure, including but not limited to Azure Virtual Machines, Azure App Services, Azure Container Instances, AKS, Virtual Desktop. We also talk about virtual networks. We created virtual network. We created about 2 virtual machines and tested how they can both connect to the same virtual network in Azure and tested communication between them. We also talk about storage. That's different type of storage that are available in Azure. And though we couldn't create a storage, but we were able to do a few hands-on last week. For those of us that were a bit opportune or chanced to kind of go through the labs, it will be, at least you by now you understand what we are talking about, or you understand each of those modules or those solutions rather that we have already spoken about. For those that were not able to go through it, I will also still employ us to find time to go through them, so it's able to make more sense to you while we are going through maybe other things or things that might kind of depend on past activities or past lessons, so you are able to get things clearly. So this week, last week rather, we couldn't complete that module. We'll just quickly continue from where we stop, which is just about 2 slides left for us to go through. So, yes. Okay. So this week we are going to be starting with databases. That's database as a service, really. It's called DAS. So Azure, when you go to Azure, you have multiple database service options that are available for people to subscribe to, and using it. The purpose is majorly to store data, and you can store different type of data in Azure based on the different type of database databases that are available. And the way they are is that they are, so database service, really, what do you use database service for? Let's look at it this way. Prior to today, we talk about storage. Storage are kind of used to store what we call partially structured data or unstructured data. So unstructured data are data types that are of video formats, image, documents. Those are kind of unstructured data. Now, when we talk of structured data, what do we mean really by structured data? Let me give an example here. When you have information that you need to store that contains things like first name, last name, maybe address, age, qualification, gender, and so on and so forth. If you have such type of data, where for every entity, an entity now can be maybe a person, for every entity in that data, they all have to conform to this form of maybe to the parameters. That's we are talking parameter now. We are talking about the name, the first name, last name that we talk about. So you have so many of such data that each person have their own properties, and the properties are similar. So in this case, you will need maybe a table kind of to store that data that contain a row. Each row is for each person, and each person have their first name, last name, middle name, job, employment status, age, and so on and so forth. So this type of data that is stored is actually called structured data. Now, structured data can actually be in two forms. One of them is called NoSQL. The other one is called SQL. So this structured data need a place. When you create your table, you need a place to be stored. And where you store such data is in a database, which will have different type of database. Now, I'll go back to the two type of structured data. The NoSQL. The NoSQL data type, or okay, sorry, I'm really sorry. Let's talk about the SQL data type. So SQL data type now have a fixed, what we call fixed schema. So all entity in the table, like the example we just gave above, in terms of you have a list of persons or people that you need to gather similar form of information about them, and you put it in a table. So such table uses SQL, or such data is stored is a structured data that uses fixed schema and have all same properties or similar properties for every entry in that table. So such data is called or it's a SQL data. So now let's look at maybe we should look at for NoSQL data. That's the second type of structured data. Let's look at how that works. I can use the best example I can use here is the an e-commerce website. So I can use maybe Jumia, I can use Konga, AliExpress, or Amazon. So I can use any one of them. They are all e-commerce website, right? So when you go to such website, there are a lot of products. You will see products like computers, you will see books, you will see food items, you will see grocery. So each of these type of items, they all have different properties. So even though everyone have a name, but they belong to different class or different family. In such case where you need to create a data to still put all of these items with their corresponding properties, even though they are not of the same type, you will use a table that uses, or a database that supports NoSQL. So you use NoSQL data structure database to store information where all properties doesn't have to be the same. They are distinct or they are different. That is really best way really to explain NoSQL data structure type. So most popular databases that is being used today is the custom database. So sorry, Cosmos is a Cosmos DB. Cosmos DB in itself is a globally distributed database type. And in that sense, what do we mean? We mean I can have a Cosmos DB maybe in India. I have another Cosmos DB sitting in the US. I have another one sitting or hosted rather in the maybe Europe region or UK. And as you write, information on one of the one in India, for instance, within within a split of milliseconds, that data has written across all the other databases. That's it. As replication is so fast that you don't know you don't see it, or you don't know what's happening around there. So that's why they say it's globally distributed. You can scale, and each of the databases scale independently of, they don't have to be on the same storage. They don't have to share storage. They can be on their own, but still replicate to each other. Now, talking about Azure SQL database, or let me just say SQL database generally, my SQL database, Postgres DB, or Postgres SQL DB, they are all structured databases. Remember, we said Cosmos DB is a NoSQL database. While SQL, that's Microsoft SQL, MySQL, Postgres SQL, they are all structured databases. So they are all ready-made databases that are available in Azure as a PaaS services. Everything on the screen here is available as a PaaS service. So they save you the headache of having to set them up by yourself. Recall that in infrastructure as a service, you can actually spin up a VM and install database on that VM. So what it means is the responsibility of you maintaining that database and the VM, it's on you, even though you are using a form the cloud service, but under infrastructure, remember the shared responsibilities. Now, let's now quickly move to Azure SQL or Azure SQL managed instance. So a situation where you have if you have a situation or organizations that have applications that are running on-prem using enterprise version of SQL, and they are using almost all the features available on the enterprise version of SQL. And such organization needs to migrate, or what they require is what is called lift and shift of that application to the cloud, such that they will experience the barest minimum disruption or changes when it comes to that application and the database. So if you look at the former databases that we have talked about, they have certain limitation. So in the sense that It's not all features that you have in the on-premises SQL database, especially the enterprise version, that's available on the Azure SQL Cosmos, Azure SQL, majorly Azure SQL, that's the Microsoft own. So if you have such scenario, you cannot use Azure SQL. The alternative database that you can use is what we call Azure SQL Managed Instance. So this SQL Managed Instance have what we call near 100% compatibility with the on-premise version of SQL Enterprise. It is managed. It is also a form of PaaS, but you don't manage the VM also, just like the other one is a PaaS also. But in this case, you even have things like when you create a managed instance, you have the ability to configure the network, maybe connect it to your on-premise infrastructure. There are a lot of things you can do with that are not available with the other Azure SQL. And if you want to enjoy those features, you have to use the managed instance where you do what we call lift and shift with minimum changes to your application. Really, that's actually the best way. So we can just quickly create a database in Azure, or let's just quickly see how it is being done. I'm going to reshare my screen and share with you my desktop. Okay. So now I'm just going to open my browser. How did I get here? I just go to portal.azure.com and sign in with my Azure credential. So to create a database, you can just search for it again. Databases, or you pick and just search for Azure SQL. Yeah. So we select. You see that you can select database server, but we just select databases. So right now we do not have any. We'll quickly create one, and you will also see how easily in the cloud, without you maybe trying to connect or prepare your computer, you can actually create the database and run your queries in the cloud. As usual, we've gone through all of this before. Stylers, DB, demo. So it's the same thing. Like we said, every resource that you want to create, you must select your subscription, and then it must be contained, it must exist or be in a resource group. So now what I'm going to do now is a database I want to create, quite all right, but I still need to select a server where that database should be hosted. I do not have any right now. So what we will do is to quickly create one. So call it Stylers DB server, BSVR, contain lower cases, DB. Okay, and you need to select the region. So like I said, I always love to use the West Europe. Yeah. Okay, and then you have to create credential for you to be able to log in. Okay, so let's see. This is subscriptions. Oh no. Okay, let me change quickly. I do not have a resource group here. I just quickly create one again. Stylus RG. BBSBL. So what happened is I've created so many resources in that subscription that it won't be enough for me to create any new one. Styler DB. Oh, sorry. I have to go back. Styler DB server. Select West Europe. Oh, it's the same. Okay, let's pick. Leave it in US. Just for us to move forward, since it's allowed there. So I guess the problem wasn't database. Maybe the problem was not the subscription. It's actually the region. So let's create a new one. I'll leave the location as that. Now I need to create credential, like I said. This credential is what I will use to connect each time I need to connect to the database to do anything. So let's say Stylus AD. Okay. Then I click OK. So what it's doing is it has created the server, and now the server that we choose up here automatically is asking what storage should we use. So because I do not have much money, this just for a test, this what it has picked is too high, general purpose. So I'm just going to drop down and select something smaller. I'll pick basic. Okay, and as you select whatever tier that you want, there's a default storage allocation to that particular database. So right now the maximum DB or the size that the DB can grow to on this plan is 2 gig. For now we don't have much thing, so you will also select the different things like the redundancy, that's the high availability part of it. I'll just pick locally redundant. Then that's all for now. I just click create. So that's how quickly we can create a database. It's doing its thing. Probably we might kind of come back if we are not really able to wait, because like I said, we are behind schedule. So I will share my screen back. Maybe later we'll see how to connect to it and start running code. or yeah. So when we come back for the next lab, we'll quickly create a code, create run script or run query against the database, either to retrieve information or to create information. So let's let's go back. I'm going to reshare my screen again. So now, quickly to talk about one last thing on that module, which is Azure Marketplace. We've talked about this before in one of, I think, module 2, where we discussed Azure Marketplace. What it is it used for? Is it's usually allow or connect end users with Microsoft partner majorly. Like I said, if you are a developer or a company that produce your own software and you want to make it available to the general public to be able to use, you can place it or deploy it to Azure Marketplace, where customers of Microsoft can easily locate that application and subscribe to it. So you will take Azure Marketplace, really, just take it like your Google Play Store or your Apple Store, all of those stores. That's what Azure Marketplace is really. Allow you to be able to create application or create your own solution and deploy it into the marketplace for people to easily discover and buy the products. So uh, that concludes the end of module 2, and we are going to move into module 3 now. I will advise, if you are on the call and you haven't gone through module 1 and 2, it's good for you to be able to have that continuous learning and understanding of how we got here. I will advise you visit those first 2 modules to um, review and then come back to join us. Okay, so module 3 is all about core solutions in Azure. And what are the things we are going to be looking at? We are looking at the core Azure solutions in terms of the IoT solutions in Azure. We'll look at Synapse and data bricks. Then we look at artificial intelligence and machine learning. So because the course is basic, you just need to know that these solutions exist and probably how to quickly create one and just the idea of what they are used for. So we're not going to be talking so much on them. And then we will now look at the management tools available for you, to you rather, in Azure, like how you manage. All we have been doing is we've been managing or creating resources from the portal. You can use PowerShell also. If you're a lover of script or lover of command line, you can use CLI, that's command line interface. And there are other ones, there's even mobile app. And then how you monitor your resources that are created in Azure. So let's first look at the Azure solutions. So in this area, we'll explain what Internet of Things are, um, uh, the Azure Synaptics, will explain what they are used for, Azure HD Insight, machine learning, cognitive services, serverless computing, but specifically looking at 2 main solutions, Azure Functions and Logic Apps. Then finally, we'll look at the available tools that are that or the tools that are made available for developers and ISVs to be able to create their application, test it, deploy it, automate things around deploying applications into the cloud. So starting with Internet of Things, what is Internet of Things really? So I would say, in a short uh, uh, explanation, it is just the ability of a device to gather information and relay this or that information it gathered, relay it to a location where that data or that information can be analyzed, and then important decisions and then are then made on them. So if I'm to give you an example of an IoT, in action, we can take farmers, for instance. Today, they are installing devices. They're like those devices that we're talking about, Internet of Things devices are actually, they're like sensors that you install in a place to study, or yes, to study how things are happening or going within that environment. So farmers these days, they have solutions that allow them to install a device maybe in their farm to gather information about how the land is being used, the humidity of the land, the alkalinity, the different properties of the sand or the soil that they are using. And by the time they analyze each of these information that the device collects, they are able to make decisions to say, okay, uh, this period of the year is when this particular soil is good for so kind of products to be planted. And at this period of the year, the land or the soils will be left to rest, to regain its strength. And at this time, there will be need for them to plant this particular crop, but using fertilizer to support the strength of that soil. So maybe another instance I can give you is a water tank. You have uh, every home might have borehole that they have dug, and then you have your tank and you have your pumping machine. So if you turn on your pumping machine, it pump water into the tank, and by the time the tank is filled up, if there is nothing or if you are not around to power off the pumping machine, the water will continue to waste. That's, it will overflow and then it will keep wasting. So what the plumbers, what they do is to introduce what we call a flow switch. So this flow switch is like a ball that is dropped in the tank itself. So it monitors when the flow switch, when the water drop to a particular level, the flow switch is to automatically turn on, either to turn on the water, the pumping machine, because that way it now allow you to leave even the pumping machine on without you bothering to go put it off at the end of the day. So the flow switch help you to control. When the water pump into the tank up to a certain level, the flow switch recognize this is enough, and then it triggers something that switch off the pumping machine automatically. So this is really Internet of Things in action. And if you also notice, a lot of fridges, televisions these days, they are now being recognized on the internet. Once you assign an IP to them, they are able to talk to the internet and able to do things, download firmware on their own, update information of how the fridge is being used in terms of temperature of the room and all of that, back to the producer or the vendor's site, where they make use of those information to know how they will develop, the next version of that particular product or fridge. So that's majorly or generally Internet of Things, the best way I can put it for you. So when we now talk of IoT Hub, that's Internet of Things Central. Internet of Things Central is like a dashboard that allow you to be able to onboard a lot of devices where they send their message, just a central or a dashboard that collects those messages from those devices that you have placed in different places and allow you to be able to analyze them in the dashboard and make meaningful information to it. Now, why Azure IoT Hub? Azure IoT Hub is what enable the connection or communication between the cloud service, that's the IoT service in the cloud, and your device. So it's a kind of bi-directional communication that happens there, where the IoT hub will make a request from the device, and the device responds by sending the messages back to the IoT hub. And based on maybe what the device have sent to the IoT hub, certain actions are being performed that now send some information back to the device. So that's why it is a bi-directional communication between the device and then the IoT hub itself. Then we have the Azure Sphere. Azure Sphere is a kind of secure it's, let me say, it's a comprehensive IT, it's a security solution on top of your IoT hub. So it includes um, solutions, security solution for the hardware, the operating system, and all the components or the cloud component that make up this solution. That's in terms of you protecting communication between the IoT hub itself, that's the application, is an application really, and the device says that you are managing. So that's majorly what Internet of Things is all about. So if we say let's quickly create a lab, let's create an IoT hub device. I will be resharing my screen. And this time I will share my whole desktop again. So, okay, let's see what happened to our database. Yeah, the database has finished creating. I can just go back to the resources. And I told us I can quickly show us how we can run even queries on the DB right from the portal without you connecting. There are different ways. Either you do it from the portal, or you can install a database locally on your computer or database management studio, and also connect to the Azure for you to be able to. We don't have time. I would have loved to show us. Or from your application, like maybe your application builder like Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio itself, you can actually connect right from the code that you are building. You can get connection string for the database and put it in your application. And as you are writing your code, it's imputing those settings, it's imputing them into the database itself. So let's look quickly. This is, yes, so this is a connection string. If you needed to connect from anywhere, you come and copy this and you put there. Then when you put this information from wherever to you are trying to connect from, the credential we created earlier, you have to supply that credential because that's the credential it's going to use. Now, when you create a database, there's something you need to do for you to be able to connect. There is a firewall here. Naturally, it will not allow you to connect until you have permitted your IP. So let's just see this here, set server firewall. So when you go here, you see already like a table that is asking you the starting IP and the ending IP. You can give a name to identify it. So this is currently, as I'm connected, this is my own IP. So I can just select this and say, well, yes, and say add client IP. So it means it will always trust this device or this IP to be able to connect to the database. So that's so if your developers really need to connect, you have to get their client IP to add for them to be able to connect. So that's that regarding part of the security on this SQL in Azure. So now we want to quickly run a query. Yes, this is query editor. I open it up, and now it's asking me to supply the username and password that I created earlier. Okay, now right here, I can start running my query. So probably the first thing I want to do, I have some, just to save us time, I have some query that I've written down. So what I want to do here is I want to create a table, a person's table that contains, people's information. So it has to have an ID. So each person must have an ID. And the data type is an ID. The ID will be an integer, meaning number. Then I want to use a primary key to be first name, last name. So what does this mean is if I create another data that carry the same exact, the same exact first name or last name, is going to complain. Then the names can be, it can be in 50 character long. So I just select this. Wait, I think I have, okay, close. Okay, I need to close it completely because there's an open parenthesis here. I need to close it up. So you don't need to know all of this. Just need to know that this is available. I click the run. So right now, usually happen sometime like that. Variable 2 cannot find data type TT was, for just in case it didn't go, I will move to the reason why we're on this page. Let's see again. Integer. Okay, so I don't want to take so much time on this page. This is generally where you are able to run your code from. You either query the database to view certain information that is there, or you write into the database to update maybe content, tables or columns that are already created within the database. That is really that. I will give you the lab file also for you to be able to follow later. So now what we wanted to do is to create an IoT hub device. So you can do it also here. Just type IoT and you see IoT hub. Click IoT hub and click create. So when you click the create, you bring the same interface that we're already used to before now. Bring it back for us, which is I just select my resource group and then give it a name. Stylus I would see of one. So then I select again the location where that's the region where I want it. And so you can click go next, but we really don't need to make any change here. We just want to, use the default setting and go ahead to create. Now, you might want to maybe change things. One of the important aspect of it is the management. So when you are creating your IoT hub, you need to select a tier also. So you can pick either free tier or basic tier. So for the purpose of our lab, oh yes, because I've already created one earlier, but just to show you, I created it for it to be fast for us. So let me change it to something else so I can move forward. Like, let's see, basic being one. Then so here you can actually specify the number of the hub. So in terms of unit, we are talking about scaling now. If you want to scale, and you can increase the number, we'll just leave it as default. So this is for security. And here are the settings. We don't really need to make any change here. We just leave them all as default, default, and click create. That's all we need to do. So in order to save time, I've actually created one. I've created one for, where is, okay, sorry. Yeah. So I've created one down for us already. So I'm just going to click it. Now, once you create your IoT hub, the first thing you need to do is to create the hub. Now, the next thing, you need to add your devices. To add devices, you open up the hub and then you scroll down to device management and you see the option to add devices there. And all the devices you've added, you will see them on the list. I've also gone ahead to create one, but let me show us quickly how to add a device. I just give it a name. Device, IoT device. Device 1, for instance. And I don't need to do anything here. I don't need to touch anything. I just click save. So now let's continue with the first one that we have created. I will just use this already. Now open it up. Open up your device. When you open it up, you have different parameters in terms of the key, the device key, primary key, secondary key. You have connection string. Just like the database, here also you have connection string. Remember that this device that you create here is a software. You need to actually link it with a real hardware. And to do that, we are going to be making use of a simulator called Raspberry Pi. So Raspberry Pi is a device or solution or a company that make device that have chips, different chips on a card, and each of the chips represent different things. So on the device, you can have the one that have NIC, you can have USB, different kind of ports, where you will take that device to the location where you want to use it and connect it to the network so that it can have access to the internet. Then you have sensor, like this red button here is the sensor that help you, sense different things depending on what you want to. So just for the purpose of this uh, lab or this class, we just create, you can use the simulator also to test how it works. So now, for us to connect or link this device to the device we've actually created here, what we need to do is to get the connection string. Just go to the primary connection string, click copy to clipboard, and go back to your IoT device, locate where the connection is. Now, this IoT device is now, you notice there are a lot of code. So, but really, it's been written. Developers will understand more of this, but then it's for you as an ordinary person. You don't need to write code. You just need to identify certain things or certain settings that need to be put in place. So what we will do is you will locate where you have connection string and select whatever is already there and replace it. Replace that information. Yes. Okay. I'll just replace the information. Scroll. Okay. And stop at the last and paste. So If you look at it, you will notice that it picked the name of the org, sorry, the name of the, yes, the name of the org that was created. And then it also picked the name of the device that was created. So this is what is now helping you. Now, on the page, you have connection string, you have keys. So what happened is it has merged both the key and the string together for you as one, just one parameter. So you put this here and then you can click run under here. That's to simulate it now. So when we click run, you notice, if you see my screen, you notice the sensor is blinking now. That's something, the device is sending a message to the hub. So we can go back to Azure and go back to the hub. Let me select the hub again. And right on the overview page, you will see what we call IoT hub usage. And if you see, you notice there's traffic already. That's, it's been receiving messages. So I needed to create it earlier so that we can be able to generate some form of data. You can see it, otherwise we'll be waiting for that data to come. So this is how you can, monitor that there's communication between the device and the hub. We don't have to go so much into it, and this is where we'll just stop for this particular topic. So let's go back. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. Mm. So now let's quickly look at big data and analytics solutions. So if you look at the way data grows today, it's different from what we used to experience in the past. Like in the past, you can have a storage of 500, let me even say still maybe like 1 gig storage size, and it take a long time before it get filled up. But if you look at today, a single video alone, sorry, a single picture could be, depending on the resolution of that picture, could even be a gigabyte in size. So organizations today, they generate huge amount of data, and for us to better understand how huge the data could be, let's take a look at an e-commerce site again. So today, if you open or if you visit Amazon or you visit AliExpress, what they want to do is, that's what AliExpress or Amazon want to do, is to be able to gather information or gather data on every individual that visits their website. So what do they want to know? They want to know things like when you visited, which page did you click, or which page did you visit on the entire website? How long did you stay on each of the page that you click? What products did you click that you were looking at? And even while you click a product, you will notice that they will already tell you these are similar products, or people that buy this, they are also buying this. So that's because of the data they've been collecting as people come to the website, over time. Now, all of this data that they are collecting need to be stored in a database. That's SQL database most of the time. Now, when they store this information, the data grows so much that they have to create what we call data warehouse. Data warehouse is a location or a storage location where you store data in thousands of terabytes. That's how large or how huge it can be. And now, what is the reason for collecting all of this data? Majorly is to perform some form of intelligence on this data and use the outcome of that analysis, use the outcome to do things like post marketing, to do post marketing activities with their customers. So you might have even noticed that maybe when you are visiting a page now, the next thing you go to things like your Gmail or Hotmail, you're already seeing adverts. Someone is sending you a mail advert because you went to a particular site and you click something, or you click a particular product, or you visited a particular site. They're assuming already you want to buy things. And they start sending you information. They can send you information like, we have this product in store now. Oh, this discount is going on. We have, or we are doing sales and all of that. They send you all sorts of information after you visit that website. And then probably until you buy. And even when you buy a product, you notice that they will keep sending you to say, okay, now we have this other product now that is similar to what you bought before, and we are going to give you discount or something. So all of this information that you are receiving at the end of the day is as a result of what they have collected when you visited their site. Now, this data warehouse that we're talking about is now being renamed to what is called Azure Synapse today in Azure. So Azure Synapse is it provides you a kind of limitless analytics service that brings together enterprise data, enterprise data warehouse and big data for you to analyze them with some form of tool, most especially Power BI. So you can, within Azure Synapse, you can do a lot of things. You can transform the data you have collected, you can analyze the data, you can restructure the data, and you can use the data to even build intelligent apps, intelligent solutions today. So every application that is built in organizations today is based on the data that they already have. If you are familiar with maybe Dynamics, you might understand a lot, maybe what I'm talking about here. A dynamic, that Microsoft Dynamics solution is majorly a customer relationship solution that have gotten different data from the customer over time based on the sales, the marketing, advertisement, accounting, and everything. And then that data, you can use it to now build intelligent applications. So at the end of the day. Now, talking about Azure HD Insight. Azure HD Insight is, I would say, prior to Azure Synapse was HD Insight. And HD Insight is an open source, solution that you can use to analyze enterprise data. If you are familiar with what they call Hadoop, Hadoop uses HD Insight to analyze the data. Then the last one on the list is Databricks. Databricks is used by people who are familiar already with what we call Apache Spark. It's a very fast and collaborative analytics service. So if you're talking about big data today and analytics today, you'll be looking at uh, these three common solutions. Those are the common solutions that are available. And like I said, for you to connect to these services and analyze the data that have been put there, you need Power BI, a tool like Power BI that can go into it. And Power BI is actually a graphical representation tool that goes into your data, help you transform, analyze it, and present the data to you in a graphical format, like a graph, like a pie chart, bar chart, or is able to give you so much information like how many people visit a site, depending on the data that you're analyzing, though. So that is really that around big data. So now, another thing is machine learning. Now, when you collect data, most of the time, you analyze them. There are times where you want to be able to predict, based on this data that I've collected over time, what is going to happen next month, or what's going to happen tomorrow, what can happen in the next minute. So that is called machine learning. It uses what we call intelligence from the data that have been collected over time and analyzed to predict the future. So your machine learning is like, let me say, it learns patterns. It learns patterns of, it learns patterns from data and then predict the outcome. So let's use weather forecast, for instance. You see, what they do is based on what happened in what location yesterday, or based on they have some form of tool that they use in in studying the weather, and then they will be able to tell you, oh, it's going to rain tomorrow, or it's going to be there's going to be storm at so location in a particular day at a particular time. And when you look at it, most of those information or those predictions are kind of accurate. In most cases, they are accurate. So likewise, machine learning is a cloud-based solution that allow you to be able to develop, you train a particular model. You need to create a model, train that model such that it's able to predict information, or is able to predict tomorrow for you. So the other solution on the list is cognitive service. So cognitive service really, and sorry, just for me to say this, people that uses machine learning majorly, they are data scientists. They have a lot of data that they analyze. So let's talk about cognitive service. So cognitive service, on the other hand, uh, allow you to build intelligence intelligence really into your apps or into a website that you have. So looking at the word cognitive is actually called recognition. It's recognition service. That's how I would say it. How you are able to, you can actually pick a picture, present it to Azure Cognitive Service, and from that picture, it's able to look and tell you, oh, this is what I see in the picture. I can see, maybe I put a picture of me. He knows that it's a human being. The picture is a picture of a human being. If I put a picture of a computer, it's able to identify that this is a computer object in the picture. And it could even go as far as telling you the brand of that particular computer. So that is the way cognitive service work. You can train it using voice. Like, I'll give you an instance. Cortana is a good one. And Siri, that Siri is from Apple, right? So before you start using them, what they ask you is, oh, we want to recognize your voice. Then the computer or the device asks you to speak into the microphone, you speak, it tell you speak again. You speak, it tell you speak again. That's because what it's trying to do is to recognize your voice so that each time you send a command to it by speaking, it recognizes you are the one talking and is able to tell you something. Or it's also able to pick what we call accent. So based on how you speak, it's able to tell whether you're speaking English or you're speaking French or you're speaking, or your accent. That accent is more like understanding the way you speak, how clearly you can speak and for it to understand. And from what you are saying or from your voice, it can also recognize what language you're speaking. That's really how recognition service or cognitive service, that's how it works. So you can use it for what we call OCR as well, not just giving it a picture or a voice to be able to identify. You can also give it an image that have certain text on them, and what it will do is to help you convert the image into text format. They call it OCR, object recognition, OCR, object something recognition. Sorry, it has escaped my mind. And so most organizations use this. And how do they use it? So if somebody upload an image now, maybe into, let's say, SharePoint, for instance, what cognitive service can do is to check that image and be able to pick in text from it. And based on what you pick, you can recognize this is an invoice or this is a receipt, and can automatically take that document and go and save it in a location, and then take the text that it has copied from that image and go and also save it in a place where they can easily search for keywords and discover the key. You can search for keyword. I just type maybe a name that is on that particular image, and it brings everything that have to do that is related to it. It brings it out for me. So that's also recognition service in progress. Then the third one on the list is Azure bot service. So most of us, this one is very easy for us to identify. You go to most websites, you will see a bot saying, how can I help you today? What do you need? What can I help you with? It's just like robots that can attend to human being with less human intervention. But what happened is they are being trained to be able to ask certain questions from you, and based on your response, they will present further information to you. Then when you get to a place where they do not have answer again, they can even go as far as asking you, would you like to talk to a real agent? Where you now say yes or no. So majorly, Azure bot service is an enterprise grade bot that make use of what we call predefined question Q&A database to be able to service people or visitors who visit that particular website. It's not only on the website. You can have organization. We are using Teams right now. In your organization, you can actually build a bot within Teams that ask maybe new employees that help them with the onboarding session. Oh, you are new. Okay, what would you like to know? Have you read this? Have you gone through this? Have you met this person? So that is the way bots work really today. So now, let's talk about serverless computing. For serverless computing, we have talked a lot about it. So I'm actually not going to start maybe defining what serverless computing is again. But let's talk about two common services in serverless computing. One of it is Azure Function. Azure Function allow developers to write code using whatever language they are comfortable with, whether C#, .NET, JavaScript, any language of their choice, really. they can, okay, so now when they write this code, what do they want to use the code for? It's majorly to perform a task or to perform a function. And before it can perform this function, an event rather must occur. So an event must happen. And when we say an event, it can be maybe anything from a traditional HTTP website request or web page request to maybe a uh, um, to maybe you uploading a document to a website or a file to a website. Now, what happened is when you, let's use that file upload, for instance. When you upload the file, a message is sent to what we call event grid. So event grid, Azure function is able to pick that message based on the message that's in the event grid to go and perform an action. Maybe the action is this form that has been filled, send two information. One, send a message to the person who filled the form that we have received the form and we are attending to it. And then you then forward the form that is being filled, maybe to a particular location where the owner can easily pick it and make use of it. So action function really is event-based trigger solution. Like we said under serverless, it's your serverless, like we said, that it is serverless, but in actual sense, I told you before now that it still have some servers that are running at the background, but the number of these servers are now reduced. So what function allow you to do it is when you are able to see what we call the true pay as you go or pay as you use basis, where if no function run or if no function is triggered, you are not charged for any resource. So when a function is triggered, what happens at the background is there's an on-demand action that say, I want to run this function, quickly provision this virtual machine of this size for me to run the function. And the moment you finish running the function, it discards the resources on the underlying infrastructure resources again. So that way, each time when you don't run a function, you don't need to pay for anything. So I would say also Azure function is code based. So you need to know how to write code. Really, it's majorly used by developers because you have to write code to be able to do what you need to do. So if anybody who have gone through who have done some form of developer before, or know how developer work, you know that in development they write functions. They can write a set of parameters or tasks within that particular function to be carried out. So that's really Azure function. Now, on the other hand, Azure Logic App is a codeless application. So, and it allow you to be able to automate, orchestrate tasks and business processes. So you can use it to create workflow that integrate with maybe other apps or other application. So unlike Azure function, like I said, Logic App is a zero coding application. Now, let's see where Logic App can come into place. I will also use, maybe you fill a form also. Logic App is used maybe, let me say, should I say for easier tasks that require not so complex steps. So you use logic app. So let's say like a situation of the form filling. Now they fill the form on the website. You send a message to the filler. Yes, we are working on it. At the same time, you send a message maybe to a salesperson. And apart from the salesperson, depending on the type of form it is, you might need to notify so many people. So the salesperson pick the form and start working on it. And maybe the HR will need to also pick something there to use. So logic app is able, you are able to create logics to be able to do all of those activities. So when you now require a more complex logics or a more complex automation to be performed, that is when you use the Azure function. So I think, okay, let's move forward. So quickly, you can see how we can create Azure function. To create Azure function can take like 10 minutes. So what I've done also is to create a sample down for us. Let's quickly go there. I'll go back to my portal and I'll go back home. So to create Azure function, you can actually just type, first you need to create function app. So function app is like a container that contain all the functions that you are going to be creating. Again, we'll click name. And the same thing. So we don't always have to go, over this again and again. So we'll give it a name, stylers. Okay. It's not on stylers function. Styler function apps. Then I need to select the runtime. So I'm just going to pick, I'm just going to pick .NET and I'll pick 3.1. Then I also need to select the region where I want it hosted, West Europe. Click next. So here you need a storage. This is very important. You need a storage account to be able to keep the commands or the data that are being generated. I already have a storage that I've created. I'll just use this same one. And then I'll pick Windows. I'll leave it as Windows. If you pick Linux, there are some limitation when you pick consumption serverless. So this consumption serverless is based on event trigger now. You request that services or infrastructure be provisioned for you. Now, as that event, maybe based on how heavy the function is supposed to that is running in terms of processing, you can scale. So that's the consumption serverless option. So I won't change anything here. I'm just going to say create. Oh, sorry, I say I've created. So, okay, so I won't go forward. Like I said, I've already created one to save us time because it will take about 10 minutes. So now I have one that has been created here. All I need is to click this function app. And next, I need to now create, like recall, we say function app is a container. So now I need to create a function. What we want to do now is to just quickly create an HTTP based trigger function. So I've also created one, but I will create another one. That doesn't take time. So creating an HTTP trigger, we click new under function. That's create is equally to new. And what we want to do is to run this function. whatever code and everything we need to do. We want to do all the work in the portal. So I'll just pick an HTTP trigger. So these are other options. Now this where you give it a name, because I picked one before, is picking two. Just create. This doesn't take time to create. So what it's doing is, as it creates, it's populating some code, behind the scene. So now we need to test it. Test this function that we have just created. To test it, you need to open up the function app, the function itself, and then go to code and test, or code plus test. Then when it open, it show you some codes that have been generated automatically. Yeah, it's usually a JSON in JSON format. So if you don't need to know all of this. So now looking at the code, you notice what it says is to run, once there's a request, an HTTP process request is triggered, is to run this code, and you need to ask whoever is running it, you need to ask for the person's name. That's this name here. It will prompt you to put a name, and you have to put the name. Once you put the name, you'll see an output that look like this. Hello name. That's whatever name you have put. So what we will do now is to click get function URL. So I copy it and I open a new tab, place it, hit enter. So now it said it executed successfully. Pass a name in the query string or in the request body for a personalized message. So what we can do is to just edit this URL by adding ampersand, uh, ampersand name, name, name equals, I'll say TT, that's my name. Then we hit enter. And what you do is, hello TT, this app trigger function executed successfully. That's how easy it is to create and test a function app in Azure. So let's go back. Going to, where's my browser? Okay. I'm going to stop sharing and reshare again. So browser, this browser thing. Wow. Okay. Page is frozen. So now let's talk about development environments that are available, to us in Azure. So we have one of it is the Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps is a collaboration tool, or a development collaboration tool that include pipeline, Git, that's repositories. It includes Kanban boards, and then other extensive automated and cloud-based load testing. Load testing is more of when you deploy an application, you want to know when there's a certain level of traffic on that particular website, especially if it's a web app, how will the application perform? So Azure DevOps is a tool or a solution in Azure that allow developers to be able to develop their solution, build their code, collaborate on, the project that they are working on, use Kanban board. Kanban board is a kind of is a board that more like allow you to draw things like a flow of how the solution that you're building will be. Then you have GitHub. GitHub is actually an American provider, that's an American host, that's host for software development. And then he help you do what we call version control, also using Git. So it offer you a distributed version control and source code management functionality with Git. So it can also work in conjunction with your Azure DevOps, and you can use it to deploy, to build your solution also. So you can choose to either use Azure DevOps to do all your development, or you can choose to use GitHub to do all your development and automate testing, and then fix bugs and all of that. You can use GitHub to do that also. Then there's what we call GitHub Action. GitHub Actions make it easy to automate all your software workflow with what class? That's CI/CD. That's what CI/CD is more of: continuous integration, continuous deployment. So more like you don't have to wait till you build a solution from beginning to the end before you deploy. So you can build them in smaller chunk, and as you build them, you deploy them and you test them. That's what they call continuous integration, continuous deployment. So it allow you to build, test immediately with your code without you waiting to get to the end of what you are building. So there is also the Azure DevOps Test Lab. So this is where you create an environment that you can test your solutions before and confirm that they are working before you probably take them into production environment. So if you recall, the day we were creating app service, we check, you will see that there was Azure DevOps test, Dev test section of it that give you cheaper costs, to host those applications and test them. Then when you finish testing them, you can then move them into production environment. So that way, you won't be wasting so much money even while you are not yet live on that particular solution. So now let's move to management tools. So in Azure, you have various ways by which you can manage your solutions. And in this particular section or segment, we're going to be talking about the Azure Portal, Azure PowerShell, Azure CLI, Cloud Shell, Azure Mobile App. We'll talk about Azure Advisor, Azure Monitor, and then Azure Templates. That's right, the Resource Manager templates. And we'll look at the service head if time permits. So this one is going to be a lot of maybe labs. The same way that we have been creating, resources, especially for infrastructure from the portal using the GUI. The same way you can also use templates. On one of those lab or demo that we were doing, we talk about you creating a particular resource and downloading the template for you to be able to reuse that particular template. So I'm going to share my screen very quickly, and then we'll see how we can create a virtual machine using uh, templates. So I'm going back to the portal. Now, let's say I need to, for us to use Azure Resource Manager, I need to first um, visit the template website. I've copied the URL. You will have it in your lab guide. So here you have a whole lot of templates that has been, the templates are codes that have been written by people and uploaded for you to be able to quickly automate things with less involvement or with less manual or user involvement. So what we will look for here is virtual machine. We want to create a virtual machine, deploy to, what did I click? Okay. Okay. Deploy a Windows with Windows Center. No. So, yes, this. Deploy a simple VM as Windows VM. We select that. And this code is actually a script. Is stored in GitHub. So we can either go there or we do not have time. So I can click this button to just deploy it. So I will click this, and what it's going to do is to ask me to sign in. But because I'm already signed in, it also automatically use my credential to sign me in. Now it brings me, to also select my subscription. The same way I'm doing there, I can actually call that template by taking the URL of the template and then going to making use of the shell. So right now, let's stay here. I need to create styler AD, a credential, admin credential, and password. 12 character. Okay. I started. Okay. Then I'll just, it has picked already a VM size that is used to create. So I'm just going to click create. Okay, it's review and then it's creating. So that is how quickly you can use Azure Resource Manager to kind of create a virtual machine. You use Resource Manager majorly for the template. I mean, Resource Manager template. You use it to create things under infrastructure, as a service. So while that is going on, the other thing we need to do is to create a VM using the PowerShell. Let's close all this. Okay. Moments. Yes. So next one is using PowerShell. Okay, has it finished? Okay, so uh, let's go to VM. I think it has finished. So we go to virtual machine just for us to verify it. And this is the VM we just created. So actually, before you create, it's still creating rather. We could have changed the name as well. Well, I guess before because of time, I didn't even remember to go there. So you can change the name before you run the script. You can change certain things from it to allow you to customize it to your own, your own taste. So now the next thing is for us to create a virtual machine with PowerShell. So first, what I'm going to do here is to click on this button when you come to the portal. You can either use PowerShell, connect with PowerShell, but before you connect with PowerShell, you need to download certain PowerShell modules for you to be able to connect. So rather than going that route, you can also just use the Cloud Shell or the PowerShell available in Azure. That's right from the portal. So I'm going to click this button here, and it's going to, launch the shell for me. So you need to select either Bash or PowerShell. So I'll pick PowerShell. Now, you need a storage for you to host all the things you will be doing from the shell. So what we will do is, saying I do not have a storage, I'm going to just say create a storage in this subscription. Okay. Okay, that VM has finished creating. It's kind of taking time. What's happening? Okay, so we can move it a bit more up for us to see what's happening. Okay, so now uh, as we are here, we can just start, you know, uh, um, creating the virtual machine that we want. So one of the things that we can do is to first confirm that we have resource group, right? And just like your normal PowerShell. So, so each environment or each solution have their own acceptable command that you can use on that particular shell. So what I'm just going to do is to get resources, get Azure resource group. It's supposed to complete for me. Oh, sorry. First, I need to connect. To connect, I have to do, yeah, I'm not typing the right thing. Connect to subscription. A weekly. I'm looking for the command. I thought I saved it. Okay, connect Azure is a subscription. Something with my check. Hmm. Okay, I think I'm going to skip this one. Come back to it later if we have time. Let's go to the third one. Even the third one require command as well. This is to be installed locally. This is going to take some time. It's going to take some time. Please permit me to skip this also for now. But one thing we can do is to be able to monitor whatever resource that we have created. I'm going to close this. Whatever resource, but just know that the same way you can quickly create resources from the portal using the GUI is the same way you can kind of create resources in Azure. And Microsoft have a very large database or knowledge base on how to go about, the commands, the various commands that you need to use to be able to connect. So it's just because time will not permit us now. I will have taken my time to go through it. But like I said, I'm going to give us the lab guide. While we are doing the lab, if we have any issue, we can always drop something there. So I'm going to reshare my screen. Same thing from browser. It's really not so interesting. So let's okay. Let's quickly talk about Azure Advisor. So Azure Advisor is a service in Azure that's that analyze your resources, that's deployed resources, and give you what we call proactive and actionable recommendations based on industry best practice. And these recommendations at the end of the day will be personalized to you. So Azure Advisor look at areas rather like performance of the resources, You look at the security of the resources that you have deployed, uh, and how available your resources are. Then, if you are using, for instance, let's say you spin up a virtual machine and the virtual machine is using 32 gig of memory and is using maybe 1 terabyte of hard drive and is using maybe 8 core of processors, right? Azure Advisor can look at it and say, you are not for the past, maybe for the past how many months, maybe a month or two, you have not even used 1% of that particular resource. So why spin up something that is so high where you'll be paying so much? So it can advise you to rather say, okay, why not drop it down to this particular level? Then it can tell you that, okay, around security, you did not deploy Defender, you did not turn on access auditing for certain solutions that support that or resources that support that. So it can tell you to turn it on. And though all of this is dependent on you, whether you want to turn them on. So because some of the things that you'll be turning on or some of the recommendations will allow you to spend more, while some will allow you to spend less. So if, for instance, you now have a VM that is being overutilized and looking at the trend of it, it's noticed the server maybe is not performing optimally. It can tell you why not increase the size or increase the number of instances. So that's the way majorly Azure Advisor work. Then we have Azure Monitor. Azure Monitor help you collect, analyze, and act on telemetry from both cloud and on-premises environment. So it's not, this one now, it's not only monitoring the applications that you have in Azure, it's also if you have hybrid, or you don't even necessarily have to, you don't necessarily need to have hybrid in place. Maybe you have applications that are on-prem and you want to be able to monitor their performance. You can deploy Azure Monitor for you to be able to monitor those on-premises solutions or applications. Now, for you to set that up, especially to connect to on-prem, there are other things. In terms of storage, you will need a storage. You need to create a storage in Azure where the events that have been collected from either any devices in Azure or any resources in Azure or on-prem, those where the logs will be stored and then analyzed later. So you can record all activities of all resources that you have in terms of access to those resources, events, things that are happening. Maybe the resource, the server, a VM, for instance, restarted or install updates at a certain time. It can help you gather those information, and then you are able to then make decisions on them. So that's in a nutshell what Azure Monitor uh, does. Then we have Azure Service Edge. So Azure Service Edge is just like Monitor. It also collects and analyzes telemetry information on both on-premises and cloud and on-premises environment also. So it's similar really, but it can easily and quickly evaluate the impact of a particular service issue and then give you a guide to go ahead in terms of resolving that particular issue, like giving you maybe articles that can help you resolve them, or helping you to asking you to create a support ticket where where articles that have been provided cannot uh, kind of resolve that particular problem for you. Or maybe the issue is for you to be able to install or deploy updates, and all of that, and is able to also give you resolutions, update on the resolutions. So there are some services that when things happen to them, they heal. They have the ability to heal by themselves without you even taking any action. So for such instance or such situation, it will give you update also of whether the issue has been resolved or not. And it also keep the data, keep the log of all activities that are happening within your infrastructure, both in on-prem and in the cloud. Service X, yes, is a continuation of the previous page, and just there's not much to really say around this. Like we have said, still the same thing. Allow you to monitor services, analyze them, collect those data, and uh, keep activities for you, give you advice. Then things like maybe plant maintenance, where Microsoft have a maintenance that is coming up. uh, it will give you information, give you that update that, okay, maintenance on this particular type of services will happen at so time of the month or of the year, and we finish at so time. So while that event or that maintenance is going on, is giving you even update of what is happening behind the scene. So you're not kept in the dark. Then, yes, we have already seen ARM, that's Azure Resource Manager. We have seen how it works, right? We've been able to create a virtual machine using a template that was made available by people, you know. So, like I said earlier, it's a JSON file, or the scripts. It's a JSON, that's JavaScript. It's a JSON file that we use to create and deploy majorly infrastructures without having to write the program by ourselves. So those programs have been written and submitted, but before they are even made available or made available generally for general public, there's a form of vetting that's to confirm that it's kind of meet certain requirements before people can start using it. So people are not kind of misled on the resources that are available. So majorly it's allow you, with it. So take for instance where you have a situation to create a VM, and maybe in the VM also to create a web app within the VM or even a database. You can already put all of those information, you can put them all in the same script, and you are able to just run it, and everything it just go without you taking any other. More like when you finish one, you do the next. When you finish one, you do the next, and then give you updates on what is happening uh, around the resources that you are creating. So uh, we have actually completed this module 3, and uh, in module 3, for instance, we discussed again, let me click, okay. We discussed Azure services, Internet of Things. We discussed, yes, we discussed about Internet of Things. We discussed about Azure function. We discussed about big data analytics solutions and development solutions in Azure, like the GitHub, the Azure DevOps, GitHub Action, or Git Action for Azure, all of those. We saw in action how Azure Resource Manager work in terms of you deploying templates, using templates rather to create resources. Now, monitoring, we thought about the two, but we can quickly see the monitoring of it in action. I'm going to share my screen again, and then we'll see quickly the monitoring of services. So I can go to Home and type Azure Advisor. So just type, just going to bring it up for you. And when you come here, already you can see, it will tell you where you are not doing well in terms of cost, security, reliability, and everything. So right now, it's not turned on. So I have to turn on whatever is it that I want, right? I'll just click try now. So majorly, sorry, did I say it's not turned on? It is actually, it's already turned on. So right now you see that everything is looking kind of good for me. To check mark that everything is all fine. And if you look at things, looking at the table here, saying I've been able to maximize at least my costs operationally. That's because this resource, if you look at for how long, this January, February, this is this month. So I've had this subscription for a long time, but really nothing was being hosted in it. So since nothing was hosted in it, just telling me everything is fine. But then now that I've just set up service, it will take a while before those information starts populating and coming up here for it to analyze. But really, this is where you see information about your environment and recommendations. Like I said, if a server is is being overutilized, it will tell you to either increase the instance or increase the uh, machine resources in terms of performance, like that, and all of that. Likewise, we go to uh, Azure Monitor. So I just click monitor. So if you have what the like we have said, what this one do is it also allow you to connect even to your on-premises applications or your on-premises environment. You can monitor virtual machines that you have created to monitor the virtual machines. If you have storage, but then it will not just start. You have to do some form of configuration for it to start picking those information, for instance. So though for storage, it's already picking on this particular subscription. And in terms of latency, this is what I'm experiencing. Server latency, you are able to see transaction time in, when you are talking about storage, it is most of the time you are writing data. So all those read and write actions, there's a form of delay that could be experienced if the storage is not performing optimally. So this is where you can monitor. Now, if you have on-premises resource, for instance, or services or applications that you also want to monitor, that's where you'll be talking about creating things like log analytic workspace. So the log analytic workspace is a place that help you bring all of those information that are on these different different applications, you bring them all together into one place. And you can also do a configuration that talk not just to applications, even up to network devices like routers and switches. You can get their logs, bring them up to Azure Monitor. That's now you go to Log Analytic Workspace rather, to go and be viewing those information. That's um, that's that's how you use. So there's a lot of things. If you are talking about you using Azure Monitor, there's a whole lot of dependencies and other things that is in place, like you have to configure it. Like if you have Office 365, so, and then you are being billed and it's very, very expensive. Let me not lie to you. So, but there are some services that are already given for free, though you monitor those services for free. But all the logs that are being generated, like Office, that's Microsoft 365 now, all the logs that are being generated need to be stored in a in a storage location where the dashboard, that's the, if you go to Security Central, for instance, you'll be able to see, all the solutions that you have that you can use to monitor or secure your services. So you have to do a whole lot of things behind the scene. But for the purpose of this course, we are just going to stay on the surface, and we wouldn't want to dive deep into it. So I think that is all for now. Do we have any question? Yes. Okay. So I guess all that we have said so far, we are able to, understand them. But if not, you can revisit. There's a recording for the classes. You can revisit the recording to kind of view them. And as always, I'm going to drop the the lab guides for us. So let's try and find time to be able to experience some level of hands-on. So because the time does not permit us, we do not have so much time to say we want to go through all the labs in the classroom while the class is going on. That's why we drop the lab guide for you to be able to go through them on your own at a later time. So I think this is where we'll call it a day if there are no questions from anyone.
Thank you very much, teacher.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
Titi.
you.
Thank you. And you all
You're
have a
welcome.
nice weekend. Okay.
Yes, and you too. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye bye, Titi.